Welcome into the new studio for TWMP Daily. We are joined by a couple buddies of mine in excellently clad outfits. Representative Ken Waller from Jeffco, thank you for being here, and thank you for this jacket. I'm very grateful, very much appreciate it.
Well, you're quite welcome. I finally see you in it. I think I bought it for him like 3 or 4 months ago,
Yes.
and he's never worn it, so I had to come on the show and wear mine so he would wear his.
I've been waiting. We've been inviting you, and he's a very busy man.
Yep.
Representative Jim Murphy, also excellently clad.
Absolutely,
We
yeah.
owe Ken a great debt of gratitude for these.
I do. In fact, I asked the speaker this morning, I said, did you know that Ken was going to give me that jacket in caucus? He said, no. I said, oh. He says, I really want one of those.
You know, if we get Patterson, we could do like a barbershop quartet.
Absolutely.
Get little round hats and stuff. That'd be dope.
I love it.
We'll do it.
So busy time in the legislature, but I want to thank everybody first of all. It's been a little transition period to get everything set up, but we're heading the right way with getting our backdrops and everything done. Thank you for your indulgence. Let's jump right in. Today, the Senate seems like they're going to go to local control of the St. Louis Police Department.
Yes.
I really, number one, I'm not sure anybody can make St. Louis feel safe. But number two, I loved when you were on This Week in Missouri Politics, you said, hey, this is not the cure-all.
Absolutely.
This is a part of a strategy, but an important part, was kind of how you phrased it.
It's an important part. The first thing you have to do is get the morale of the police department up. And I think this is a huge step in that direction.
Yeah.
You get the morale up, recruiting, everything becomes easier. So that's one thing. And I think they feel better about their jobs. But the city has all types of problems. If you look at the city, if you ask them, what are the two things that we can do to make that city better? They'll say, fix the crime and fix the schools. And the city's done nothing to do either. Now, we did when we put a new prosecutor.
Isn't the crime in the schools a reflection of the public at large?
It is, but it's also just leadership doesn't care or hasn't really cared.
How'd they get there? They got elected.
I know, and that's a problem. That's a problem.
Representative, as our friend Dave Marshak says, the crime travels out of the city. Yeah, they go down 55, jump off. There'll be car robberies, and they'll be back in the city where they feel pretty safe.
Well,
it is a regional issue.
That's
yeah.
my district.
Well, and I think actually he's coming up, I think, tonight to speak on a bill tomorrow that's going to be heard on my pensions committee on the Sheriff's Retirement Fund.
Quaked.
And so he called me later this afternoon to let me know if he's coming. But yeah, he's very worried and concerned about that traveling down 55 highway.
Yeah.
And becoming a problem. And I know Representative Murphy lives in that general area in South County, but I don't even like going downtown anymore to ball games. If it's a day game, I'd probably think about it. But if it's a night game, I just don't like going downtown.
Okay, Rich Callahan's a buddy of mine. He would tell you, St. Louis is safe, walk downtown. I'm like, okay, hold on. To me, the difference is this. You go to the game, right? It's a night game. You go to patios afterwards, let the traffic die down. Let's say you're there. The game ends about 9:30, 10. You stay for an hour, 11:30. Let's say you're from out of St. Louis and you're staying at the Magnolia Hotel, which is about 6 blocks up on Washington Avenue. Would you let your wife walk there at night by herself?
Not a chance.
No.
Not a chance.
Now, here's the next question. Would you walk with her or would you just grab an Uber? I honestly think, and again, I'm very open to say I'm a white trash hillbilly from Butler County. I probably have perceptions that may not be with reality, but I think they're widely held perceptions if you want the truth. I think most people grab that Uber and they don't walk. Maybe the former speaker from your county's there can give them a lift.
But here's the problem. At that hour, there's not a lot of Uber drivers that go down there either.
Sure. But I'm just saying, I don't think if it was Casey and I don't think I walk the blocks. I really think we get a ride, not because we don't want to walk 6 blocks in St. Louis, a beautiful area. I'd feel unsafe.
Absolutely.
Well, I've pulled when I went to ball games, and I imagine you know where this parking spot is. As soon as you get off at Park, go down and make a quick right and then a left. I park in that parking lot right by 44, so you can get on there immediately as soon as you get down there. Now it takes me a while to walk down to the stadium, and obviously walking back probably takes 7-8 minutes to walk down there and back.
Yeah, but you don't wait around an hour and a half after the ball game.
No. That's what I'm saying. I would leave immediately after the ball game and walk back there and immediately get on the highway be home.
And that's what's sad.
But that's the problem. You can't stick around.
Like if you let's say you live in Farmington, right? You'd be inclined to stay the night. you'd want to go do things in and around the ballpark. I mean, that's the
Sure.
People talk about public money for stadiums, and I know it's controversial, but the thought would be, from a policymaker standpoint, it's not just you want to see the Cardinals win another World Series, which I hope is on both of your minds every day.
Yep.
But it's also that stadium draws that crowd, and that crowd spends money from Illinois and everything. When it's so dangerous, it cuts back on it, like you're talking about.
Well, you just don't feel comfortable. And then, my kids obviously are grown, but I would take my wife. But if it was a day game, I wouldn't worry too much about it. It doesn't get dark till 8 or 9 o'clock at night. Not a big deal. But I would not go down at least for the immediate future, to a game at night. And, I know you was asking Representative, is it a fix-all if they take it over? No, we all know that. It's not going to automatically get better, but you have to do something. And this situation...
And there are other parts to that bill.
Sure.
I have a piece of that bill.
What is it?
And it goes right to your point. What we have in my area, because I'm right at 55 and 270, and there's a bridge over to Illinois, so it's the perfect area for these hoodlums to come in and go through the neighborhoods. And I have a bill that it prevents them from going along checking the door handles through the neighborhoods, because what they do is they come in and they intimidate you. They'll go up to your Ring doorbell and they'll hold up their gun to tell you, don't you dare come out here. I'm going to rob your stuff, but you stay in your house.
Really?
Really. That's what they do, and they do it all the time.
It's legal right now to just go check and see if somebody's door's unlocked?
Well, yes.
Well, that's bullshit.
So what my bill does is if you go through a neighborhood and check multiple doors, it makes it
if you check any door that's
I
not
know.
yours.
Well, I know.
I mean,
but
if
multiple
you
means that you didn't do
drove
it.
an F-150, a black F-150, I might come out to the parking lot and accidentally open the door thinking it was mine.
Right.
But that's the only reason you should be checking doors.
That's
right?
why it says multiple.
Yeah.
So if you did that one, that's fine.
I've done that before. I've ran into places and I've been like, oh, that's not mine. That's the one over here.
And that's just how Jim Murphy is, kind of like E.F. Hutton. I said that when I passed this jacket out. When E.F. Hutton talks, people listen. When Jim Murphy talks, nobody probably could think of a bill like that, and that's a good bill.
Yeah.
The other part of that bill is if they have a gun,
yes,
it becomes a D felony, or if they steal a gun, it's a D felony. Now, every Democrat should love that, because they're the ones that hate the idea of people having guns, and they hate the idea that people steal guns out of cars. They'd rather put you in jail for leaving it in your car than do anything to the person who stole it. Well, if you steal a gun or you have a gun while you're pilfering my goods out of my car, then it becomes a real crime. Right now, it's not.
Well, Scott, and I wasn't going to bring this up, but I think it does apply to what we're talking about. You had the municipal elections primary in St. Louis yesterday.
Oh yeah, what did you think of that?
I was not surprised. I've met Kara Spencer a couple times, just but not I get to talk to her. But I mean, that was a butt kicking, and I understand it was 4 people in the race and so on and so forth. But now she'll, I guess it's like ranked choice voting, right, Jim?
Yeah.
So she'll be running against Tashara Jones, but I would think that she would probably win. And so
I had somebody send me the results from this election, and with all due respect to our St. Louis friends, a percent is a percent of 100. They would light up like 150%. It was so weird.
Yeah.
Jake finally took and just said, okay, here's the who got what. But I've never understood this voting system they have is like hieroglyphics.
Yeah,
I don't get it.
So
you
I
can
just,
vote
I mean,
for everybody. Why show up and vote if you're gonna vote for everybody?
Well,
What'd you really do?
well, and I know we had a ranked choice voting bill, I think at one time that, tried to.
it bans it. It actually passed. It's done.
So, I think that when the elections, I guess it's next month, right, Scott? I think it's when it is. I would think that Kara Spencer will be the new mayor of St. Louis. And
She will be.
And I think that, it's kind of like with the new governor. I think when you have somebody new come in, there's always an air of excitement. I liked Mike Parsons. I can't say anything negative about Mike Parsons, but I'm excited about Mike Kehoe.
Sure.
And I think Mike Kehoe's going to do some great things. And if he
And I'll
stays a
give you
full
a
8
prediction.
years.
8 years from now, you'll be excited about Andrew Bailey, whoever the
Well,
comes in
yeah,
next.
but you don't like my grandma told me, you don't put the cart before the horse.
Yeah.
Let's just take it 1 year at a time. Let's see what we can get done. He's going to
That
have
natural excitement's good. I think Mike Keogh's an exciting guy.
He's already engaging. I mean, he showed up at somebody's house. They was having a dinner thing, and he just shows up at their house at like 9:30 at night and just says, hey guys, how you doing? I mean, very engaging. And I love that, you know. A lot of events, we went to the Taste of the South. There he was, speaking, of course. But if you're engaging like that, people like that.
Yeah.
And it makes him not just popular, but I'm excited as a legislator. Even if I wasn't in the legislature and I was doing something else in politics somewhere, I would be excited about our new governor.
I think it's so clear that I have a lot of Democrat friends. And frankly, a lot of them wanted Mike Kehoe to win. I mean, they would have preferred the Democrat one, but
They knew that wasn't going to happen. Sure.
yeah. But the truth is, I always tell them, and I think it's proving true now. Eigel and Ashcroft would have got on Facebook and said a lot of stuff you don't like, right?
Right.
It'd been all Mike Kehoe's quietly in people's offices actually going to win stuff.
Yes.
They're going to put wins on Facebook. Mike Kehoe's going to put wins in the statutes. And I think we're seeing that come in. Nick Shore, right? I watched Nick Shore. I've said before, I thought Nick was the most important legislator coming into session. He's come in, and he could have come in and just threw a fit and complained and got nothing done, right? We've seen that for half a decade in the Missouri Senate. I watched Nick Shore came to play. Rick Bratton, the same way. But Nick came in, and he's going to get this police bill done. And it's not it's not just what Nick Shore has done to get this bill that I think will get perfected. Maybe not tonight, but sometime in the next few weeks.
It might be early in the morning.
There you go. It's what Nick hasn't done.
Well,
Nick has played his cards very well.
Nick is a friend of mine, and Nick is probably one of the most talented legislators I know.
Talented politicians as well.
And if he gets out of his own way, he's the most effective.
I think you've seen the best of him the last 2 months.
The only time he's not effective is when he gets in his own way, and he's finally figured it out, I think.
Well, Scott, to your point, and to Representative Murphy's point, you need that to happen. Based on what we've dealt with the last couple of years, and even the last 3 or 4 years, you need a Nick Shore to do that. You know why? I think because it breeds other people doing the same thing,
Sure.
and it rubs off, and they're like, "Wow, he's rolling his sleeves up. He's getting some stuff done, and he's a very likable person." And so if he's doing it, then I think it rubs off on some of the freshmen.
Well, you know, I walk through the Senate, you know, I say, "How's it going?" And everybody's. It's kind of like everybody says, "Well, we're walking on eggs, but we haven't crushed any yet." And that's kind of, and I like that
And
because
credit to
they
Tony
need that.
Luetkemeyer and Cindy O'Loughlin.
Yep.
Sure.
I do think the body's a reflection of its leadership, and I think thus far they've done a good job. But I go back to Nick could have came in there and said, "Okay, we're going to throw fits. We're going to get on Facebook. We're going to blame people, and we're going to get nothing done." It's been the exact opposite. Credit to Rick Bratton too. Rick Bratton has came to play this year, and you're going to see Rick Bratton put wins on the scoreboard. And the funny thing is, the Democrats are going to fight with themselves a little bit in the Senate. There's some internal rifts in their caucus
Sure.
that have come to light. It's kind of funny when the Republicans quit fighting with each other. The Democrats are doing a little bit of the same.
See, this stuff didn't just happen, though. Through the off season, there was so many conversations about, you know, let's get the pettiness out of this. Let's not punish anybody. Let's work with everybody. And you know, Nick said all along, "You treat me right, I'm gonna do good." And they did, and that was the key. There was an understanding that let's not be petty anymore. Let's look at the actual legislation.
There's going to be, you know, it's one of those things. There's going to be an element of, oh,
egos.
you killed my legislation I worked on for 2 months. Oh, yours comes up on the calendar next week. Oh, how about that?
How about
that? That happened. That is not.
That's
that was not a
politics.
conservative caucus. You can't blame that on Jim Lemke or Bill Eiler or Onder. That was go ask Charlie Shields about that. Go ask Jason Crowell. I mean, that is, to me, the only thing scarier than the Republican Party not being able to pass anything is them passing a whole lot. The public is not really that much danger if you don't do much.
Right.
It's when you do stuff that is, to me, the thing. But first of all, if you're bringing your family to the Capitol and you're going to put them up in a hotel, what's the hotel you put them up in?
Well, of course we're going to do it at the Marriott.
Yeah, the Courtyard by Marriott. United Fiber, the best rural broadband in the state, up in the Great Northwest. And then I want to take a minute here, Kelton, if you'd zoom in. My buddy John Compas has written another book. He's like noted author now, multiple-time author. Yes, it's on the Missouri Times bestseller list. It's called Creepers and Copers. It's not a dating book or a book about romance. It teaches women, which I'm always afraid when I say teaches women. But Casey read part of this.
Oh, really?
I don't know if she's finished it, but she never read it. It is a very interesting book about relationships, but it's funny. It is really cool. And my buddy John, you can get it on Amazon. That's where I got this copy. Creepers and Copers. John Combest's take on what women need to know about selecting male companionship.
How many times have you been married?
Well, maybe he's
Maybe he learned from all that.
Yes,
Yeah.
I mean, can you really take advice from a guy who's been married for 40 years, Jim? I mean,
No.
you
No.
know,
We just give in, right?
maybe you need advice from a guy that hasn't been married quite so long,
There you
right?
go.
I mean, I don't know.
Oh.
But no, seriously, go to Amazon and check out John's book. It's great, dude.
Hey, I want to give a shout out before we get off the air. I don't know how long we got, so two things.
We got some time.
The speaker's office, I just tell you, I love going in there. So Lisa, Carey, and Quinn, those guys are doing a great job, along
Yep.
with the helpers, Ryan and the different ones that are helping the speaker. So it's really a lot more easier to work with those guys, it seems like this year than in years past. Nothing against Dean Plucker. And also, there's going to be people that are going to be watching this are going to see the ashes on my head. And so I was standing in line in the back of the chambers, and the father, the one that leads the prayer most of the time, he said, so he was giving ashes to the Catholics. I'm not Catholic. And he said, this is not a Catholic thing. He says, you can get this if you're not Catholic too. And I'm like, I'll take any blessing I can get from you, Father. He seems like one of the nicest gentlemen.
Absolutely.
And I remember going to him. I don't know how long he's been there, Jim, but Representative. But it's like, he's just one of those guys that, hey, I'll be praying for you. And you know what? I appreciate the Catholic father, and we have a gentleman that leads a Bible study on Tuesdays. I appreciate, I know it sounds weird, but I appreciate the spiritual part of that.
Sure.
That you've got a good Catholic man and a good Protestant man that will pray with you, and I've talked to them both. And I don't know, Representative, what do you think? I mean, I think that helps. Having somebody
we need
there.
all the prayers
so
we can
I
get.
wanted to clarify that, so when people say, "What's that on his forehead?" I was like, "I wanted to match Jim."
It's that
so
sensitive.
me and Jim
Well,
kind of look
yeah,
like brothers,
Matching jackets,
matching
ash.
foreheads. Yeah, so
I don't know if it could go as far as be a kiss ass to the speaker, but
no, but you understand. No, but I'm not talking about the speaker per se. I'm talking about his office.
I understand.
So let me tell you one
No.
person that should be a little kiss ass to the speaker.
Okay.
Representative Tricia Burns.
oh, geez.
John Patterson has a way of keeping a cool engine. I'm not sure, and maybe I don't know him well enough to spot it, but I don't know I've ever seen him just really unhinged mad. And whatever, Representative Burns texted the suicide hotline. She said to test it, which is a bad idea. Don't do it. It's not good. But she, there was going to be criminal charges filed. And Patterson slowly starts this on Tuesday, slow walking this, being cautious, being calm, and before you know it, it's all worked out. And I thought that is a great example of a guy who runs a cool engine, who just kept it even keel, and now that whole kerfuffle that everybody was talking about last week is pretty well put to bed this week. I think that's a testament to a guy in charge being like, okay, let's be cool here. Let's slow walk.
Well, and
this.
I mean,
I called John my submarine captain. He runs silent and runs deep.
And I think that paid off. Representative Burns should probably be very grateful that he does that, because if you've seen the people that were banging the drums out publicly were making it worse. The guy that was slowly every couple of days calling and moving, and it worked out. And shout out to Locke Thompson. I got to talk to you about the president's speech.
can I make a comment on that?
Yeah.
Tricia Burns is a good legislator, and she just made a bad decision.
Yeah.
And and that to me, as you said about the speaker, is quiet leadership.
Yep.
Most people, unless they're watching the show, wouldn't even know what happened. And he just he really worked through that, as you said. And that's why I'm not sucking up to him.
Yeah, you are.
I think he likes it, but I'm saying that's leadership that you got to have.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that wouldn't have happened in prior
You could
speakers.
go about it two ways, right? You could go out and publicly give grief to the compass, give grief to the prosecutor and the police, and they would have dug in their heels.
Yes.
Or you can kind of just keep a cool engine and work it out.
But
And
for her
then-
sake, that's good.
Very much.
She's
the
a
best
good
way to go.
legislator.
And I'll give kudos to John, but I'll also give kudos to Alec Riley.
Yes.
Alex Riley did a lot of
Alex
work.
Yes.
Riley's an attorney. He was involved in that all the way. And
And I think the moral of the story is if you want to test the system, test it. Don't freestyle your own prank call to the
Well, and to Representative
look,
Murphy.
there were multiple problems with what
Okay,
she
let
did.
me ask you this, though, coming out of this, to me, the interesting part, I learned a lot about the suicide hotline. I had seen the billboards or something, or it looks like it's a little lacking. I mean, I think the suicide hotline is someone answers the phone and tries to talk you out of it, right? That's not exactly what I saw from this.
Well, I'm not going to criticize.
Is that just too expensive?
I'm certainly not an expert on that.
But it's having a live person.
You know, when
just
she
too
says
costly.
that I texted it and it took me to to some type of survey and so forth, is that just to tie you up, give you something else to think about until they can get somebody there? I don't know. I'm not an
I
expert.
don't know, yeah.
So for me to criticize it, I need a lot more information.
I'm with you. I have no information. This is a totally uneducated thing.
Right.
But what I learned about the hotline from this,
Well, I didn't even know it existed.
really, see, now I did.
Okay.
I think somebody came here and put a bunch of magnets on the refrigerator back in the speakeasy. But I think I saw some ads, or maybe I saw some billboards.
Maybe.
I was aware it existed. I guess I maybe had a different concept. I've never called it. I guess I had a different perception of what it was. It looks like a chat bot, which there's nothing more annoying to me than when I'm supposed to be getting customer service, I get chat bot. I would think it looks like that could be updated a little bit, but it would cost more money.
Well,
So-
and you know, I guess the criticism is the response wasn't good. Well, the response to her was great. I mean, they sent tons of
What are you
people
gonna
out
do?
looking for her. You know,
Well,
so-
and let's just be honest, Scott. Suicide is a bad thing. Yeah, and I had some young ladies in my office this morning before I came over here. Suicide. A young lady from Hillsborough, Kiana Nelson. I'll throw a shout out to her. And she's 17, and she's been affected by suicide, and she wants to start an initiative in the schools to help, to get more bullying out of there. I actually talked to Representative Murphy coming over here. She wants, at 17, she wants to do something about it. That's what you got to have. Young people that are willing to put themselves out there, and so, but suicide's a bad thing, and
Yeah.
Well,
you just
Jim,
don't
I've
know.
heard,
You
was
just
quite
don't know
the
who it's
bully
going
back in his day.
You don't know who it's going to affect.
Well, and you know, I'm under the opinion, and you know, I've got some legislation, but I don't believe we're ever going to stop bullying. It's always been there. It's it started
And
on
a little bit of bullying, is
it gets you a backbone. We get that, but what we don't teach our kids is how to process that. You know, okay, you were probably bullied when you were a kid.
Then I bullied.
and you bullied. But
Kind of the way
but
things
you
went.
processed it. You didn't let it affect your entire life. Some kids are not capable of doing that. We got to teach our kids.
Do you think there's a problem with kids overall? Maybe every generation thinks this. That the kids that are kids now are just softer.
Well,
They're
they
just
are.
mentally softer.
Well,
The internet, the
Yeah.
cell
Yeah.
phones,
The social
all of
media
that.
stuff, I think, is a
they're
made
not.
it a whole
I'm
different
not saying
world.
they're not taught, Scott, to work hard. Because I got two boys that worked really, really hard, and they're in their 20s and early 30s. I think it's just that there's so much the internet, gaming. They don't get out and do a lot. They stay
Well,
they're inside a lot.
We grew up in the play generation.
Sure.
Where we went out and played.
Absolutely.
And we beat each other
Yeah.
up, and now we're in the social media generation. They sit across each other and text each other.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just
Well,
what it is.
and to Representative's point, at least in my neighborhood where I grew up, most of my life in Festus, the neighbors had authority to get on you, almost like an aunt or something.
We're not going back to the old days, that's for sure.
No, but what I'm saying is that's what's not. We don't have that, and we don't go outside and play anything. We don't
Did
do
you
anything.
catch any part of the president's speech last night?
I
I've caught clips.
I caught clips of it. I laughed when he looked out at the audience and said, "You people should be applauding."
My favorite part was he goes, and we've stopped the putting our political prisoners in prison. How'd that work out for you last time? I did pretty well. And I was like, that's so hilarious. It really was like one of his speeches he gives, but in the United States Congress, which was a little weird, I thought.
Well,
but overall,
yeah, it was like a rally.
it was. This is my favorite part. So I saw Mark Reardon, a buddy of mine, posted this. CBS News did a flash poll. Now, my assumption is no one at CBS News voted for Donald Trump, and they all hate him. The speech made you feel 68% hopeful, 54 proud, 27 worried, and 16% angry. Most of the angry, I'm sure, work at CBS News.
Or sitting in the chamber.
And then it says that in the speech, Trump was presidential 74, entertaining 74. See, I don't think he was presidential at all.
No,
but
I
he was
don't
entertaining as hell. Inspiring 71. I like it when he just talks straight. Unifying 62. I didn't hear any unifying. That number a little high. And divisive 46. He was quite divisive. If I was picking those, I would go entertaining, inspiring, divisive.
But only he can do that.
Only he could do it.
Only he could do it.
I think he's the unicorn. If J.D. Vance tried to do that, people would be
could
like,
not
"Oh,
do
you're
it.
a poser. You're
He
faking."
could not do it.
Well,
The whole thing with the Ukraine, I mean, only he could do that. Nobody else could do that.
From New York, I probably have a different perspective of.
Yeah, what is it?
When I moved from the East Coast to the Midwest, New York to me was, and the way we do business in the East Coast is, problem comes up. I got two guys that work for me. I'd say, hey, what do you think? What do you think? Okay, we'll do that. And that's how that worked. If it didn't work, 2 weeks later, let's do his thing. You come to the Midwest, and it's, let's get the team together. Let's get a little focus group on this. Let's just see what the consensus is to get this done. And by the time you get the consensus, it's either worse or gone away.
Yeah.
But East Coast works much faster. They're much more decisive. And that was Trump. Trump was used to saying, hey, that's broke, fix it. He went to D.C. and went, hey, that's broke, fix it. And I said, well, we can't do that.
Take 12 years, yeah.
Yeah, in 15 years we'll get around to it. And it drove him freaking crazy because he's from New York. It's just the way it is. You know, I've been told that I'm a little blunt with what I do, and it's because of my New York. I get it.
You got a little Irish charm on it, though.
A little bit of that.
A little bit of that.
Now, I tell you, 10 years ago, probably you'd have thought I was just a...
Well, I'll share this because, a lot of people know it in the Capitol, but him and Representative John Simmons had a little back and forth in a committee that I was sitting on, and it was great. I loved it. I loved what John was doing. I loved what Representative Murray was doing.
How
It
do
was
you
just
let
so...
these House hearings go on for so long?
Well,
You gotta. That's insane. You gotta
Yeah.
limit.
Well,
like in the Senate, they start off the Senate hearing and say we're gonna be here for an hour. So whatever we get done in this hour,
Yeah.
let's just have a couple people on each
Well,
side.
wait a minute.
You decide.
You're saying that the Senate has hearings.
Well, they have rubber stamps to send things to the floor.
Yeah, four senators come in, they take roll, and two of them leave. That's hardly
Yes.
a hearing.
Well, in the Senate, it's done on the floor. In the House, the committee work's more important. But we can't lose Corn Man there.
Yeah,
Speaking of combust, we can't. I just think 4-hour hearings. My God,
Well.
what do you really have to say?
well, it's a lot
Right.
of bills. It's just not one bill.
See, I think you have too many bills.
Oh, absolutely.
I think Plocker, he didn't execute it right. I think,
No, he was
I think
executed horribly.
because of some issues. But I think at the end of the day, if you send 1,000 bills to the Senate, they can just sift through and pick whichever ones they want to pass or they want to pass them and tell you guys to screw off with your priorities.
Actually, it's worse than that because they hear them in order.
Yeah.
So you'll have 15 horrible bills before you can get to one good one.
yeah.
Those
but it's-
15 don't need to be there, is what
As
you're
far as
saying.
horse trading, and I think we're going in, we're kind of having a retro session where it's not the Republicans in the Senate versus the Republicans in the Senate with everybody else standing over watching, with the Democrats just counting days off the calendar as wins.
Yeah.
I think in a normal session, when I worked at the Capitol, you had the Speaker and the Pro Tem had a fight over what was the Speaker going to force the Senate to take up and pass before he moved forward.
Yeah, and I'm part of that this year, being fiscal review, because I'm going to hold all the bills until we get that deal made.
I've never seen that deal be able to be made till April.
Late.
Yeah.
It's late. It's not now.
But, I mean, let's talk about a bill that's going to be very tough on the Senate, abortion.
Yep.
Representative Stennett's coming up with a package that would address Amendment 3, I assume. The Senate is coming up with their own version. The Senate doesn't want to talk about it because they know how this ends and what they're going to have to do to pass it, so they
Right.
like to keep that hush-hush. Here's my white trash take. The people of this state are generally pro-life.
I agree.
They were not as pro-life as the law that was on the books 6 months ago. They are not as pro-choice as the law that's on the books now.
Right.
Are you going to be able to keep your side happy by putting something on the ballot that could actually pass? Or are you going to fall in that crack of having to be so pro-life that you can't get something that can pass? Because it's going to be, even if you do a reasonable thing, it's going to be a fight.
The answer to that is I don't have a clue if we can do that.
Because you could put something right wing and it roll to the House, right?
Well,
but it wouldn't pass the public.
Let's face it.
It'd be worthless.
This was a fight of narrative. We had a narrative going on forever that we got to ban abortion, and people bought into it thinking this is Roe versus Wade. That's never going to.
Not really.
So we did that, and then the narrative got that we went too far, and we were kind of oblivious to it because we'd already done it. Who cared? Well, they won that narrative. We went, that we went too far. And something got put on the ballot and said, okay, let's roll that back. I don't think anybody knew how far they rolled it.
If we're just
they
Ellen
didn't care.
Fitzgerald's and you ask somebody, are you pro-life? Most folks don't talk about abortion in real life. They'd be, they'd be like,
pro-life.
well, what if someone's raped? They'd be like, well,
yeah.
What if it's, I don't really think people talk about incest or know much about it, but rape is something that I think people have some semblance of. Maybe they know somebody. They would say, well, get an abortion. I think you don't have to fix much. You have to fix that and maybe give them 8 weeks or something. But I guess it comes back to.
Yeah, and we need to fix some of the things like, we absolutely gave blanket immunity to doctors, anything they do that has anything to do with women's reproductive rights. So a doctor could literally deliver a baby and take your uterus out, and you couldn't sue them based on what we passed in Amendment 3. That's horrible for women. They didn't know they voted for that.
Well, I don't blame the Supreme Court for this. I thought with the Clean Missouri thing, they really opened up a lot of bad public policy when they said you could take two things. Now, I'm not a lawyer, but now gerrymandering and lobbyist gifts are two different things.
Yep.
Just by your own, if we's over at Chicks having a beer and we explain this to some old boy having a beer with us, yes, those are different. And the Supreme Court says okay to put them all together. So what did the Republic? I get what. So you come back and you do the same thing because that's the rules.
Right.
I think it's.
The Supreme Court needs to follow the real rules.
Well, I'm not. You can get me lost in legalese very quickly. I'm not a person that is versed enough in it to really have an educated opinion. But I say this, from common sense, you need to have one thing on the ballot that talks about the one thing, and it needs to be shorter and easier to understand, and that should be something that everybody should get behind.
I don't know how. I
Minimum
know
wage,
I know what we
easy and
should do. I know what we should do. We should do a reasonable bill that puts it back in tune with what Missourians think.
Yes.
And it's exactly what you said. Now, do I have enough members that aren't purists to get that done? I don't know.
But when you talk to a purist, I don't think I believe the reality is this state is moderately pro-life. And I would actually say pro-life, but by the definition of pro-life from some, it's moderately pro-life. Mm-hmm. So right now, we're pretty radically pro-choice. I have a way you can tell if somebody's pro-choice or pro-life. You talked about the narrative. The narrative is if you come in and call abortion, you're probably pro-life. If you call it reproductive health care, you're probably pro-choice. Right. And what did that ballot language say? Reproductive health care.
Absolutely.
I mean, it was written, that ballot language was written by left-wingers to pass.
And nothing in any of the arguments talked about the baby. Nothing.
No, they don't think it's a
person.
We
never talked about the baby.
The people that wrote that ballot language don't think that's a person. They don't think it's be talked about.
And I've said all along, if you don't believe that a fetus is a living human thing, then I can understand all of the way you think about, abortion.
Yeah.
Well, remember,
but
Scott,
but if you believe that a baby is a living human being, that makes it hard to find any reason to kill it. And
what did Reagan say? What if I'm wrong? Well, but what if you're wrong?
Absolutely. But that's where the purists are. If they absolutely believe that it's a baby, and I do, I have nothing in my heart that says I can just kill a baby. But I'm a realist too. I want something that works well for everybody in the state, that we can pass, that doesn't jeopardize the baby. Whatever amount we can save, we should save. And however we can protect the women, we should do that. And there's a middle ground here. Now, how can we get to it? That's the question.
Well, I think amongst Republicans, there's a middle ground. I think there's two common sense facts that are operating here. Number one, I do believe this law is more pro-choice than the state of Missouri, than your average Missourian, and your average Republican for sure. The question would be, can you convince people that they want to win enough that they'll accept something that's not totally pure. That's the part I wonder about.
It's going to be tough.
Well, and look at some of the results, Scott. Yeah, it didn't pass in Jefferson County, but it didn't not pass by an overwhelming amount.
Yeah.
It wasn't 70-30 versus whatever. So that's what they needed to have in rural Missouri for that to not pass, because you knew the areas of St. Louis and Columbia and Kansas City were going to pass it. It's just, and the other
Getting
thing
a no
is,
is easier than getting
and,
a yes.
and the other thing is, how many of those bills, Representative, was initiative petition that was put on the ballot? I don't know, 3 or 4 of them.
That damn Curtis Trent's one of the smartest people that I personally know. He had the idea that said everything that was in the past could be repealed by the old system, but to pass something going forward, you had to have a new system of IP reform. I think the Constitution should be harder to amend. I mean, and there will be a time when the Democrats are back in charge and it'll be disadvantageous to Republicans, but I think the Constitution is too easy to change. But I think you can't really change that until you change Amendment 3, right? You're like, it's like a game of pool. You got a ball blocking the 8 ball. You ain't get a shot at it.
I think we need a clean slate to talk about it. If you're talking about it at the same time you're talking about abortion, now it's 2 abortion bills. I think if it's the thing we're talking about that isn't affecting something else on the ballot, you have a better chance of getting your narrative out. But if we'd have put IP on the ballot last time when the abortion was on the ballot, they'd have said, "Oh, they're just trying to kill this." It's hard to sell 2 things at a time.
I also think once the signature gathering had been approved, nothing you passed was going to change Amendment 3. That's a narrative that some people, for their own purposes, like to say.
Well,
I don't think that's
first of all, they'd have been on the ballot at the same time, and it wouldn't have affected it.
Yeah.
So that was just crazy. We should have done it 5 years ago or 4 years ago. We had the chance.
Yeah.
And we didn't do it. Yeah.
I do think it's that big a deal.
It
But
is a
we'll
big
see.
deal.
Well, give me a bill you want to see passed this year. Well, what's a priority? to you?
Well, I mean,
What are you going to be happy about if you're driving home to Jeffco in May that you pass, and what are you going to be a little red-assed if it didn't pass?
I think the crime bill. I mean,
Yep.
it's going to affect our county if we don't do something.
Let me ask you a
And
question.
some people that you talk to, they don't believe that. I believe that, Representative. It's in his area. It's moving south. It's moving
You're a
west.
long-time local elected official. Let me play devil's advocate for a second, though. If you're Carla May, and last year there was a bill about this landfill, right?
Mm-hmm.
Idiotic bill. Mm-hmm. Totally, you guys deciding you were the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Right.
I stood up against it.
It was just a very illogical piece of legislation. But one of the arguments was, well, you shouldn't care because it's my district. This only affects my district. Now, with the crime, I think it does affect more. But if I'm Carlin, if you try to take over the Dexter Police Department, we'd all have the guns out saying the hell you are. If you try to take over the Farmington Police Department, but if you're Carla May, you say, why are you taking my police department over? I'm a net positive giver to the state on revenue. Our place is, go mess with your own. And I think the same token, since they've had local control, it has not gotten better. Also, it wasn't that great under state control. I don't remember like a bunch of wonderful safety measures under state control, do you?
Absolutely. No, I mean, let's face it.
The cops' morale is a good point.
There is absolutely no confidence that the leadership in St. Louis is doing the right thing. Zero. And
So
even the people that live there don't believe
If Tashara Jones would have had half the vote, would have led the ticket last night, I think this bill's easier to pass today. I think Kara Spencer having what, by all rights, is a resounding victory. I think Kara Spencer having that victory might make it a little harder. Don't you want to give a new mayor a chance to try to work some things?
No.
No.
All right.
No. Well, they've had their chance and they've blown it over and over. I mean, they've got a school system that's dying, and they had millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars from the RAM settlement. How much of it do you think they gave to the schools?
But isn't that a state
None.
function?
No.
Schools?
My schools are 87% local supported. 87%. They get 13% from the state and federal government. So no,
What could you do
is
to
local.
change? I mean, look, I give you that the schools are terrible up there, but you take a kid that hasn't maybe had 3 meals in a day in a long time, that's dirty, that may be sick and doesn't have health care, up in a home where there's probably, if you're up all night, very destabilized. You send that kid to school, and you say, "Here, teacher, teach this kid."
Well, here's what you don't do. You don't do the same thing you've been doing.
I agree with that. Yep.
You find a way to, their job is to find a way to make that work. And it's worked in other cities. They've come up with programs that have taken very poor kids.
All right, let's say you pass all this legislation.
Yep.
What is a metric you're going to use to say, okay, this is working or it's not?
Can we grow that city again?
That's a great metric.
Because I will tell
That's
you
a great
that,
metric.
10 years, 20 years ago to now, we've lost half our population. Every year it goes down. And who's fleeing the city is black families.
Mm-hmm.
Black family. In 3 years, blacks are going to be a minority in the city of St. Louis. Just think about that.
Yes, I don't think skinny white liberals have done much for St. Louis.
No, and at some point we got to stop blaming everybody else. Do we give enough to St. Louis? We give just as much as we do to Kansas City, and that seems to be a place that I like to go out at night.
I would have no problem walking from, let's say, the Evergy headquarters to the plaza.
Not at all.
Except being fat, and it'd be a long way. But I wouldn't feel unsafe.
Yeah.
Now, there may be statistics that say I'm wrong, but that's my feeling.
But the truth of the matter is their crime statistics are not much different than
grow the
St.
city
Louis.
is your thought.
We got to grow that city.
But the perception's very different.
And
I
change that.
I actually think Mike Kehoe's
But the perception comes from leadership.
I think you're right. I think Mike Kehoe, this is bad politics for him. I don't think there's nothing in this to gain. I think he's doing it because he cares. And I think that having a metric that you can say this is what success is, and then working towards it, that changes perception. And that's a leader that says, also the leader has to step up and say, hey, if I don't hit this, then it's on me.
Yep.
So.
And one more question. This is a small thing, doesn't seem like much. You say, when I leave and go back in May, the child care issues that we seem to have, and the problem that even Governor Parsons talked about. Child care I'm not saying it's a crisis, but there's some issues with child care, and I know we passed a child care bill. We passed a child care tax credit.
You're going to have to loosen up the regulations. Right?
There's got to be something.
I think because of bad situations, there were kids that were mistreated. Yes. You've made it so hard and so burdensome that I think you're actually doing a disservice to the rest of the state.
This is what we do in the legislature. We pass law for the worst of us.
You overreact to the last
instead of the best of us.
Yes,
I agree.
And we have to stop that.
But I think that's a cultural phenomenon you can see in Washington and other state capitals too. I don't think we're necessarily unique in that.
But we could be smarter than them.
Yeah.
We could look at it, just because something bad happens doesn't mean we take away everybody else's rights.
Yeah.
And
I think that's
what
what's
we
happened.
do. Absolutely, especially in daycare.
Representative Murphy, thank you so much for the time.
Okay, thank
Representative
you.
Waller, thank you so much for the time.
One more shout out. I had this guy sit next to me for 2 years. Part of the reason I got him a jacket was because of the influence he had on me. He was very kind to me and very helpful as a freshman, and I appreciated that, and that's part of the reason. But I got a new guy next to me now, Dane Deal. I call him Double D. I'm going to give a shout out to Dane because Dane is one heck of a nice guy and a good.
I will pay for the jacket if you tell me where I can buy it, and we'll get Dane in here.
Okay.
It should be a tradition. If they sit by you on the floor, they should get it.
I don't disagree. Well, I'll let you know.
I'll buy Dane.
Hey, and I got it from
I owe him
Casey.
for a counsel.
Remember, I got it from Casey, not from you. Was your jacket size. And you know where I got his jacket size from? His wife.
Yeah.
The day after we got done at Lincoln Days, I said, what's Representative Murphy's jacket size? Like a day later, she texted me 52. I said, he's going to get a jacket one of these days.
I'll give you where Jim Murphy has been a mentor to me.
Yes.
Is we'll be drinking somewhere, and I'll tell him some great idea I have, and he goes, I think that through.
Yeah.
I think put a little more thought into that.
Well, like I said, I'm not trying to embarrass him on your show, but what I'm saying is,
by the way, he says the same thing to me.
Having somebody.
I listen to you though. That's different.
Scott, when you're a freshman legislator, there's a lot of things that go through your head.
Sure.
From excitement from the day you get elected to coming up the day after to vote on leadership. It's just from the top to the bottom. And like I said, he was very helpful to me, and I would love to see more of that with more.
See, you went from
mentors.
Kissing up to the speaker to kissing up to me. But thank you.
Well, okay.
Representative Waller, thank you again. We love the jacket.
Yeah,
Jim,
hey, don't be the last time you wear it, okay?
It will
I don't
not
want
be.
it to be like set in your closet for a year.
Well, it's hung on that door right over
A
there.
year.
waiting
It'll
for
be
you
a
to come
year.
in.
I know you. it'll be a year for you where you need to wear it at some party you have back in the back when you.
Oh, I will.
You
do
need
that.
to wear that.
And I'm going to wear it in the 4th of July parade here in Jeff City.
If you do
that's-
that,
Maybe I'll
that's
come
where
down
I've
and
had
walk
it.
with you.
Huh?
Maybe I'll come down and walk.
Oh, yeah.
with you.
I might come down too for that.
Well, it's just 3 of us walk
Friends,
through.
walk- yeah. We'll get
Yeah.
We'll get some-
Patterson one.
Well, hey, thanks for having us on the
Yes,
show
thank you very
and
much.
doing this.
Guys, stick around. We're going to bring in the guy that actually built this studio, talk about how we constructed this and what we're going to do with it next after this. Back to TWMP Daily. We appreciate Representative Wall and Representative Murphy coming over. But I want to bring in a guy that actually has built this whole thing. Billy Johnson, thank you so much for not just being here, but thank you for the construction on this. When we first started this, we said, I'm going to build a TV studio out there. And you kind of cocked your head at me a little bit and was like, really? And I'm like, yeah. Well, you took this project, and if you watch This Week in Missouri Politics on Sunday, you're seeing a set that Billy kind of designed, right?
Well, I was hoping after you told me you wanted to build this studio, you was going to say, "Here's the plans," and we'd be ready to
Well,
go.
now that you know me, you know that was never going to happen. That was total farcical.
Yes.
But you actually drew it out, what it looks like, the desk, the lighting scheme. I mean, it was all. We had some fun times adding onto it. But I mean, the desk people see on Sunday morning, that's all a sketch you brought on a piece of legal pad, right?
Yeah.
Did you? What do you do? Do you Google something like that to figure it out, or how do you?
I asked my daughter. And she brought it all up for me. So.
That's awesome. So we moved into the show on Sunday. Really, I think people might have thought your work might have been a little off. It's just we had bad cameras, but since the first of the year we've got these new cameras. I think people can actually see a lot better what we're doing in there. Then we decided we were going to take the studio, which we have to thank United Fiber. I want to thank Courtyard by Marriott. Everyone for coming in and being on the show. It's really created the midweek update. It's a great thing. Now we're doing a Jake cast. That's awesome. He's getting better guests than me. I'm a little pissed about. We said we move this out here. You extended this thing, what, about 10 feet, the studio, to where we are now?
8 feet. Yep.
And we boxed it all in. These things got to be soundproof, right? Which adds a different element.
You definitely notice the difference.
And I think we did, what'd you do, the plastic? You did a little bit of the garden stuff. I don't think people understand. The stuff they use in studios is a lot like your garden carpet, right? The garden fiber you'd put down to keep weeds from growing through, right?
Yeah.
When you think about it, it's dense, but it's a little reflective, so the sound can soak into it. But that's kind of how we wrapped everything up, and then we were putting lights in yesterday. I think Kelton was still moving cameras around about 5 minutes before we started. But that's how we do things. Now that you're part of the crew, you know we don't plan. I mean, planning is, we don't fact check and we don't plan.
Seeing it in action is one of the greatest things, and it's really been remarkable to see it expand and grow.
Well, I want to thank you, because this would not have happened without your ability to actually take the thoughts we had and to make them come to life, and then, like with that desk, actually enhance them. So I'm very grateful to you. I want to thank you for the friendship, and thank you for the work. It's great. If you like the show, this is the guy who actually did the construction and make it happen. We talked to Talk Politics on Twitter a little bit. You got a few opinions.
I got some.
Give me an opinion. When you watched Twitter last night with his president's speech, what'd you think?
I didn't even watch it.
I wouldn't. I hate to admit, I don't watch State of the Union speeches, but I did watch the later last night when I heard all the people going, "Oh my God, this is amazing," and it was kind of funny. They kicked a guy out The Democrats would sit there they had little signs, which I thought was dumb, so dumb, which is basically, I don't know. I'm sure it was negative stuff about Trump. I've only seen the memes of them, which is hilarious. Trump is just Trump, man. There's only one.
He is the man.
I think the problem's going to be for the Republican Party. When you have the original, how do you follow Trump? Like J.D. Vance, I mean, how do you really, he probably a great politician, but I mean, to follow Trump, you're going to have to, what do you even do to follow that act?
That's a tough act to follow.
I mean.
Like Waller and Murphy, yeah.
Yeah,
Tough act to
exactly.
follow. You guys got issues to talk about, you know what I mean? We're talking about the studio.
Well, I like talking
but
about
it's important. It plays an important part because those issues get brought up. You know what I mean?
Talking about the studio is important to me. I don't know about anybody else,
Yeah.
but it's a very big deal. I do think the problem with the Republicans, I mean, if Trump continues this pace, he will be the most consequential president of our life, who could continue this pace? But I just don't know stylistically how you go from this incredibly watchable person who says all these things that are so controversial. How do you go from that to just your regular politician again? I don't know how you do it. I mean, imagine being a Republican, wanting to run for president in 4 years. What? How do you replicate? Because that's what the people want is Trump. How do you replicate Trump? I don't think you can.
No, you definitely can't replicate Trump. He's a one-of-a-kind person. I mean,
I think the Democrats might be good to play it safe. I think this election could come to them just because the Republicans are going to be very disenchanted because whoever they get, no matter how interested they are, they're not Trump. You know? We'll see. Billy, thank you so much for all the work you did on this. Appreciate everything. Everyone, if you actually enjoy the show, this guy deserves the credit. We would not have any of this without Billy bringing these things alive. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the time.
thank you, Scott.
Thank you, bud. We will see you Sunday with a full opinion maker. We got Jeff Fernetti make his debut Sunday on This Week in Missouri Politics.